OK, bonjour tout le monde. La réunion aujourd'hui va être en anglais, mais si vous en avez des questions, parlez-vous la langue de votre choix. We'll get answers to you, and if I can't fumble my way through an answer well enough in French, then certainly we'll follow up later for you. Okay, so getting on with everything today. Be a quick update on high performance, a bit on membership, a little bit on coaching and officiating programs, some hosting news and program update, a little on communications, and then just sort of other errata. So moving right into it. Looking at high performance. So obviously we got through some pretty spectacular tours this year. We had our team off at the Independence Cup. We had a team over Les Ceintures. We had a team at the first proper World Challenge over in Czech. We had a World Cup, the only World Cup that we've attended this year, over in Kazakhstan. And then, of course, we had our U19 team over in Brandenburg. And of course, we've got Jesse on the line. He was one of the coaches who was over in Brandenburg. And Lila was one of the officials who was over in Brandenburg. So it's good that we had lots of representation there. I want to say, because it's not a surprise to anyone, that the results that we had at the World Challenge were quite strong. We're very happy with how we did there. However, 3.5 weeks later, we were not able to repeat. And in fact, I would probably suggest that maybe beyond disappointment in how poorly our athletes did at the World Cup. That's not to say they didn't perform well, but the end results were certainly not what we were looking for. And there was a lot of hand wringing and a lot of reflection that happened amongst the national team staff and I. And we put together a strategy to look at what it was that we were doing in the ring that was obviously not what the judges were rewarding. And what are we going to do about it? Because between the World Cup in Kazakhstan and the World Championships, we had a 5.5 week training block set, and I think the coaches did a good job sort of retooling a little bit, figuring out what it was that strategically we could do, tactically we could do within that time period in order um, to target our performance a little bit more. And from what I saw at the training center, I think we did a good job. We invited in some of our World Boxing certified coaches, officials. We collaborated with some international officials who were able to give us some advice on what to change. And in the domestic part of the camp, which sort of wrapped up on, I guess, on Sunday this week, um, I was starting to see some technical change and strategic change. And now our athletes are overseas. They're in Scotland for a pre-camp before the World Championships, where they will continue working on some of these minor changes, and then be ready for September 4th, when the draw happens, and we'll be all back into competition for a week and a half at the World Championships. So looking forward to seeing those results improve. We do have a goal of 2 top 8 performances at the World Championships this year. We've got a relatively young team. There are some vets certainly on the team, but a relatively young team. So certainly just breaking into the top 8, I think would be fabulous, and that's part of our published set of goals for the high performance program that's available for people to look at. I want to touch on a few things from a PTSO perspective. So our national team program, we continue executing. The last thing on the national team program now is this World Championships, then into Melee Gala, which happens 2 weeks after the World Championships at the end of September. That's in Winnipeg. And then we've got a U23, which goes all the way down to U19 athletes, identification and assessment camp that's happening in Montreal. We had to push that back a little bit because World Championships were sort of crowding out our September. And then we didn't want to interfere with either Quebec Nationals or with Ontario Nationals, 2 of our largest boxing events in the country. And we didn't want to disadvantage anyone who wanted to come to our camp and put them in a difficult spot having to choose one or the other. So that U23 camp has been pushed towards the end of October. And then, of course, we've got nationals in Winnipeg coming up towards the end of October. Um, our nationally identified athlete list, so we continue updating that as we have athletes make criteria and results. The next big change on those results will come after the assessment camp for the U23 athletes. It really is critical for any of those highly ranked U23 athletes that they think really hard about coming to that assessment camp, because the assessment is an important part of their identification going forward into national team programming for 2026. Our athlete categorization document also continues to be updated. It has historically been a separate document, which meant that you and coaches would have to flip between different documents all the time. We're going to incorporate that into the national team plan document 2026 for next year, so there isn't so much flipping back and forth. But of course, we've also got a cheat sheet dashboard to see where athletes are categorized at any given time. And then I want to highlight the karting dashboard. So that is completely up to date. We put all of the results for our athletes out in public so they can be seen, so that there are no surprises once the period of selection for karting ends. And just in case anyone doesn't know and wants a little fill in, when we talk about karting, what we're talking about is the Athlete Assistance Program, which is put on by Sport Canada. So that's federal money. And we have 8 slots within that program, which is money that can support up to 8 athletes at a full level. And then if we don't have athletes meeting certain criteria, we can carve up each one of those 8 slots and provide money to more athletes. But you need to be ranked within the selection process in order to get karting. And has been in the past a source of stress on athletes and coaches and the staff when Boxing Canada has sort of rushed at the end of the year to sort of figure out who it is who gets karting. So our previous HPD put together this sort of dashboard that's ongoing and continually updated, and we just continued with that. So I encourage all athletes who might think that they're eligible for karting to take a look at that dashboard, see where they're at, and if anyone has any questions or is curious about certain results or where results fit or don't fit, after consulting the document, please don't hesitate, give me a call, and I'm happy to explain. If we have any errors in that, we want to catch those early, right? So we're sort of crowdsourcing a little bit here to make sure that we're not missing anyone, or we haven't executed the criteria improperly. And that way, when the criteria period ends at the end of December, we'll be able to very quickly move into getting our new set of athletes that funding that they deserve. I want to remind everyone we've got the draft of our national team program 2026. It is as up to date as we can get it at this point. We're still waiting for World Boxing to tell us some of our world level event dates and locations, specifically the World Challenges. But we've made a few structural changes to that document. I mentioned already the athlete categorization would be in there. We also have gone and we're highlighting what we'll call World Open level events. So these are not World Cups and they're not World Challenges. I would slot them down one layer deeper or lower in the ladder. And we're publishing these sort of 1 or 2 of these a month within the NTP as a service to our clubs and our provinces who are looking for opportunities to take athletes international at an appropriate developmental level. So pre-national teams. So these are club versus club events. In the past, we've seen national teams attend some of these. However, with the full 4 World Challenges and 4 World Cups per year, I don't think we're going to see as many national teams attending. So really, these are high-level club events, but we've got this list of them that we think are of high quality, and we've got some degree of relationship with the organizing committee of each. And like I said, if you were interested in taking a team out international, this is sort of where you should probably start looking. And then a few other changes, and this is one that I want to highlight early. So when we're looking at our 2026 Elite Nationals, so that's more than a year from now, right? November 2026, we are going to make a change to how we are selecting athletes, or sorry, how we're selecting athletes, the quota spots that are available for the provinces. So what we would like to do is we want to take anyone who has won a national tournament series event, and the national tournament series for 2026, we'll talk about that in hosting a little bit, is the Brampton Cup, the Quebec Open, and the Canada Cup happening in Calgary. If you win any one of those events in an elite open category, then your province will be granted a spot by name for you as that athlete to be able to go to nationals. Then we will also take all of the previous champions. So the 2025 Elite Nationals champions will be granted a quota spot to their province by name for that athlete. And then we will go, instead of 2 quota spots for province, we're going to go to 1 quota spot for province. And then we've got wild cards on top of that. And the idea here is to try to support these high-level tournaments happening across the country. So between Brampton and the Quebec Open and Canada Cup. It's also a goal of ours to really fill out that top 16 per weight class. And it's our goal to provide as much flexibility to each province as they need in order to send athletes who are deserving to go to nationals, to make sure that they're there. So, for instance, if we have a province, like I'll say, who isn't on the line right now, Manitoba. So if Manitoba thinks, you know what, we think we've got the top 3 women's 60 kilo in the country right now. They can send all 3, right? They've got their 1 per weight class, and they can register the other 2 through wildcard spots. Okay. Or if any of them are so good that they were the winner of the previous national championships, that's great. They're guaranteed a spot. Or if they've won one of the national tournament series events, that gives them a spot. So there's a lot of flexibility there, and we're really happy with how a number of the provinces are executing on these wildcard spots. The wild cards enable you to deal with things like injuries from some athletes who may have missed your provincial championships. Or if an athlete is, can't attend your provincial championships because they were, I don't know, away with the national team. It just gives you the flexibility to be able to just slot them in and and make sure that they, if they're a deserving athlete, that they're able to go. Question from Jesse.
So just so I understand that, I somehow missed part of it. There's You'll be a spot for anybody who wins the Canada, Quebec, or Brampton Cups, a spot for anybody who won nationals in the past or just the last year.
In the last year,
In the last year, and then every province still gets 2.
we'll go guaranteed 1
Uh-huh.
plus wild cards.
And sort of an infinite number of wild cards.
There is essentially an infinite number of wild cards. Our goal is to get to 16 per weight class per category.
Right.
And we know that right now, men's 55, men's 60, men's 65, men's 80, we're up at that level right now. It's the other categories that we're having some difficulty in filling out, and frankly, some of them even filling out to 4 or 8 athletes. So we're looking to promote this competitive environment, but also have some flexibility to make sure that the right athlete is making it in. And I want to be clear, we're providing these quota spots to the province to decide whether the province wants to execute on them or not. The final decision about who is eligible for a quota spot goes to the province. Whether we have room in the competition, I mean, if say if Newfoundland goes and registers 20 athletes, right, through wildcard spots, we're obviously not going to get through all of them in a single category. But we want the flexibility to be there so that if we've got a hot spot or if we've got some demonstrably really strong athletes, that they have the ability and they're not being limited by the artificial two per province rule that has been in place in the past.
I guess I'm because you use that example of like just having an abundance of talent or what have you, a very deep situation. And I mean, BC is probably more uh, more usual in the sense that we don't have that. So beyond Ontario and Quebec, I think most people are probably in the situation that we are, where we have, you know, two or three max in a weight class, and some of these categories that you listed are going to be represented sort of ad nauseum by the same person. Like our number one in the province will also be the guy that wins the Canada Cup, will also be the guy that won nationals last year, and will also be our top pick. So there's not any more, like then, yeah. So those aren't going to like replace the. I'm just trying to understand why.
Yeah, those are in addition to, right? So you
Right.
get one per province in addition to any that an individual athlete has earned for themselves.
And the way it's been has just been we've had two guaranteed spots and sort of however many wild cards the tournament will bear, and that's going to continue. So it's essentially not different,
It
really.
is, yeah, it is not a significant change, but it is going to look different on paper for people who have sort of the simplified view that every province should just have two people there at nationals.
Okay, and maybe and potentially some of those wild cards will be backed up by some sort of reason for them being there, like
Oh, they'll
they
they'll definitely need to be backed
title
up. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
No worries. Uh, okay, and I think the point around, provincial control is important because we understand that participation at a provincial championship or a provincial selection event is important for development for many provinces. There are some provinces who say, look, if the athlete's so good that they won last year, whatever, we want to open up other opportunities and we don't want them in a tournament where they may be blocking out potential participation. And that's one of the reasons why we say, look, that athlete, I'll pick on Kioma, okay, let's say. If Quebec says, we don't want Kioma participating in our provincials because we don't want him to block someone out potentially, and even in the first round of competition, right? Well, this is one of the reasons why the wild cards exist, so that if someone gets blocked out by a superstar athlete, that internally the province can decide, okay, we're going to execute a quota spot for this individual if we feel that they're deserving, right? The whole idea is to provide as much flexibility as possible, especially because we know that a lot of provinces you've got volunteer committees running selections and, things come up at the last minute, injuries come up, opportunities to compete elsewhere come up. The, potential of, we thought we were going to be able to run a 3-day tournament and it only turned into a 2-day tournament and something weird happened and right. So having the flexibility, I think, is important to support our provinces. Okay, I'm going to move on. So looking at memberships, so I've got some pretty amazing news here. So, and just to clarify, right, technically we don't have, when we're talking about individual participants, we're not technically talking about membership. In membership in Boxing Canada is technically it's the provinces as an entity or members, but we're gonna we're gonna ignore all that and just call all of our registrations memberships. Okay, well, we are well ahead of where we were last year. In fact, we've blown through it. So this number was from before we processed registrations this week. There were another 72 registrations that came in. So we're actually at a number closer to 10,680, and probably tracking towards the end of the year of breaking 10,850, because we do know that obviously it slows down, but I'm always amazed that even in December we seem to get registrations for the previous year that show up on our doorstep. Whatever, we'll process it if it comes by. Um, a reminder that we are generally shipping on Wednesdays out of Montreal, membership packages as they're put together. We are pushing the use of Canada Post for smaller deliveries, so that we can save money wherever we can. But if for some reason you need something rushed, just let us know and we'll make sure that it goes into one of the courier packages. We do have some ups and downs, however, within this information. So when I look at the breakdown of where we've got our, like what type of registrations we're getting, this is pretty typical, although with the use of Tracky, we can now break these down to a degree that we weren't able to before. So looking at, say, I've picked on the number of officials in the past. Actually, officials memberships towards the end of 2025 have gone up, and I have to give a big pat on the back to BC. BC has 25 more officials than they had in sort of their average for the past 2 years. So whatever changes you guys are doing over there, good work. Yep, Jesse.
The change was that to be a registered club, you needed to have a registered official with your club. So if anybody's interested in doing that, it was pretty easy. Um, that's all we did. So 25, boom.
Yeah, brilliant. So a good strategy for other provinces to take on potentially in the future. Um, the other area that we continue to see strong potential is in our recreational memberships. And some of our provinces have broken out their what I would consider recreational memberships into different ways. So there's the bare bones recreational membership, which is just sort of for club members who you don't really do a whole lot other than come in for fitness classes. That's great. And there are some clubs who are clearly putting in a a provincial and Boxing Canada membership for each one of those participants. And so I'll say it in front of everyone, like Destiny Boxing out of Ontario. Well done, right? Every single time we process memberships, there's like 5 or 6 for Destiny, and just thank you, right? We really appreciate that. Um, and then we've got this sort of new area of initiation, which can be initiation competitive, which would typically be a Funbox member, but could be an adult in programming as well. And we've seen a few provinces use this initiation but no sparring as a membership type. So I put that out there because I think it's an interesting nuance, and it can create a a little bit more work later on down the line if we have an athlete who decides, oh, you know what, actually, I have a non-sparring membership, but I'd really like to bump it up to sparring. How do I do that? And we the province needs to figure out a process. Is it a bump up in fees, or we're just charging the whole thing? Like, how do we figure that out? That's a nice problem to have, right? And it doesn't happen all that often, right? But 50 or 60 of those nationally a year, that's not a huge burden on anyone. And if we're serving our participants well, then that's great. But I want to point out two what I consider significant problems if in where we're going. And the first is looking at our gender self-identification. The fact that we have only 16.6% of our of our registered participants showing up as female is horrible. And I know that we are being examined closely by Sport Canada on this because 3 years ago, admittedly at the end of the pandemic, our female percentage was hovering just under 30%. So we've gone down by almost half in a 2 year span. And this is worse than last year, right? Last year we were hanging around 18.5%, if I remember correctly.
What
Um,
was it, Chris, in 2019, pre-COVID?
uh, that's a good question. I don't have that in front of me. My suspicion is it was just over 20%.
Eh,
Yeah. So I know the tail end of COVID had our best ever sort
Yeah,
of towards equity. And we know that in a combat sport, the reality is that we are very unlikely to ever get to gender parity. And I look at karate, wrestling, judo, and taekwondo, and we see that pattern, right? So, and no one expects us to get to 50-50. But when we're trending in the wrong direction, that's not good,
yeah.
right? There are some female initiatives that we are putting together in order to try to work on this from a national programming point of view. And I know that there are very good female development programs out in the provinces right now. But I just want to highlight that the
Mm.
overall registration situation is just not it's not going in the right direction. Okay.
What would be the best in class that you would typically see, from a ratio standpoint?
I'll speak from a gender standpoint first, and then we'll get
Yeah,
into self-identification in other areas. So
yeah.
when I look at Ontario, for instance, has a great program where they're doing female-only sparring camps attached to each of their major competitions, right? So, for instance, at the Brampton Cup, and Tom, if I speak incorrectly on this one, please step in and correct me. But I remember at the Brampton Cup, I don't think I saw it last year, but I may have left early. But on the last day, when the majority of participants had sort of come out of the tournament, we were only dealing with finals. In the morning, it was sort of an opportunity for multi coaches to come in with all their female athletes and do some female specific drills and sparring and coaching in a group environment without the pressure of competition on them. And I know that's been happening in other training camps in Ontario as well, and Quebec has been doing something similar. Tom, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, we are certainly, we have our female development committee, and their goal is once a month they have a training camp, female development training camp. And then, for instance, we have our novice tournament coming up. This starts tomorrow.
Mhm.
And on Sunday, we have a sparring session for females only. And we have about 30 registered at present. You have to register through Boxing Ontario, the same as if you were registering for the tournament, but there's no cost, that's all. And you're right about the Brampton Cup. So that's a goal, is every single time we have a major tournament on the Sunday morning. And we use it for two reasons. Number one, you're right, we asked the coaches to show up, but we asked some of the novice officials to come in, and we actually have them in the ring working with the girls. Sometimes we have let's say, a judge that doesn't referee. Well, we try to get them in the ring and referee the novice girls as sparring sessions, just to get them some work too. So it certainly can do a lot. But I'm finding the numbers down even that. I mean, at the Brampton Cup, we had 55 girls at the sparring, and we're 30 at this one. So whether that's a summer thing or what,
Mm.
but we're hoping to get the numbers back up where, the through the female development training camps once a month, or at the tournaments, we can get those numbers back up.
Yeah, and I'll speak to one other area that sort of segues into the next bit, which is I believe, and I know Marlo just had to leave, unfortunately, into another meeting. But in Saskatchewan, I believe there have, as a province, decided that for each club, the first X number of females, X number of officials, X number of Indigenous members get their membership, their provincial side of their membership for free. And those individual participants are not charged for the national component of the membership fee. The province covers that off for them. So that at that point there, it's a purely a monetary support or resource support to encourage participation of athletes who either may not be able to afford it, or that can be used by a club, so that the club may actually continue charging the same amount of money for that participant, but then because the club isn't passing on that expense of the registration, they're able to take that money and put that into programming, right? In order to make sure that we've got an extra coach around or a female coach around in order to support that programming. So it's another facet of how we can be supporting our athletes. One thing that we're going to do from a national level is we're going to start at our what I would call our fringe weight categories. So either at the super lightweight side or the heavier side. In the women's category, we're going to put in a system where you don't actually register and pay right away for your registration into a program. So it's say into the Canada Cup. What you do is you sign up, but you sign up to a waiting list within Tracky without having to make a monetary commitment right away. And what we're hoping to do with that is break the cycle of females waiting to register until they see someone else is registered, right? Because you get a chicken and egg problem, right? If no one's registered, then I'm not going to register. And if 3 people are all thinking I'm not going to register until I see someone else register, then you've got 3 people who don't end up competing. So we're going to pilot some programming changes like that in order to see if we can encourage people just to register, get their name in the system, and then once we've got enough participants to actually either have a bout or run a category, then we will go and alert all of those people saying, hey, remember how you had that no commitment sign up to a waiting list? Well, it turns out we've got 4 athletes in your category. Are you still interested in participating? And hopefully we can break up that log jam. And I have to congratulate an athlete. It was August out of BC who had contacted me partway through the season this year to say, hey, we've been experiencing some difficulties in getting registered for tournaments. Is there anything we can do to support women? And this is one of the initiatives that she had come up with. So I'm going to test that. Okay, and the other area is from a PTSO point of view is the self-identification of Indigenous participants, but also we do questions on military and emergency responders. And I put up the Indigenous registrations that we see. This is maybe a little behind because this is probably in early July that I pulled these numbers. But it's super low. Based on purely demographic for Canada numbers, we would expect with a membership base of over 10,000 that we'd have at least 2 times the number of self-identified Indigenous registrations that we actually see within Tracky right now. And we've got a number of provinces who are not reporting at all on this. And I'm not sure whether that's concern over actual reporting that they may have, or they're just not passing on the information. But I would say even within our, the questions about military and first responder, which is, I'm not sure why historically we're asking for that, but it is information that Sport Canada does ask for periodically, even though it doesn't really amount to much. But we've only got 2 provinces who are consistently reporting that data. So this is another reason why I'm excited about moving on with Tracky going forward, because if we've got everyone doing individual registrations online for themselves, and we're not sending in pieces of paper to the province, and then the province is executing the registration on behalf of the participant, I'm really hopeful that we'll get higher quality data going forward. This was also, I have to say, a real impediment to starting up the Indigenous Committee. Out of the, let's say, 200 and odd self-identified Indigenous members that we had, even then we only had email addresses for half of those. So we were already starting at a really low point in trying to reach out to our members. But like I said, the completeness of our data set is an ongoing problem that you'll hear about in a little bit. So just running quickly through some of this, we've got all provinces except for Quebec and BC are fully using Tracky. Quebec and BC are half using Tracky, so BC has their own online system, and we're converting the data into Tracky format. And Quebec, they do a dump out of the system that they're using, and they provide it to us. I really, really can't emphasize enough the quality of data that we get out of the provinces who are fully using Tracky and using it for online registration. And right now, that's Ontario, certainly, but then also Alberta has moved to that. And I believe Manitoba is now doing it as well. The quality of the data is super high, and it is.
And what's the reason for Quebec not to move forward with this?
That's a good question. I'm
Is it
not
just
sure.
change management type, with a bit of resistance to change, or?
Some of it, but Quebec also is unique amongst our provinces in that they are not they I got to be careful what I say here. Their fundamental structure is different, right? They're the Fédération des clubs de boxe,
Yeah,
right? They're a federation of
yeah.
boxing clubs, and
Mm-hmm.
their membership is the boxing clubs as opposed to the participants. So there's a nuance there that relates to their funding, it relates to how they operate, it relates to who they're accountable to. And I don't want to get in the way of that at all.
Yeah.
And the system that we've got, when we get data from them, like it goes into Tracky. So there's no problem. We're not losing anyone,
Okay.
right? But in Quebec, are you able to go into Tracky online and do a direct like Quebec membership? No, you are not able to do
Okay.
that. And I'm not sure
Oh,
that that's on the horizon for the 2026 year either. BC, I know I've had conversations with Marin about potentially moving from their current system, but I have to say, if their current system is working for them, I see no reason to make a fundamental change, right? So we're not asking people to move the world here, but if you don't already have an online system, we feel that Tracky has a pretty good rep, and we've been able to use it well, and Ontario's been using it for a number of years successfully. So September sales, right? So they're starting up September 1st. You can start buying your 2026 membership. Again, one of the reasons why Tracky is so important, I believe, is that you as a province, the provinces can go in under their admin access and send out an email to everyone for whom we have emails and remind them, hey, you can start buying your membership right now. And I know that for provinces who are, always looking at, what money do they have available to run their programming, having membership dollars earlier in the season rather than later is a really good way to be able to execute programming effectively. So I really want to push everyone into this idea of using the online live registration system as much as possible. And then this highlighted thing, so we have asked Tracky to update our system so that it can create a suspended member list for us. So if for some reason we have a suspension of a membership and that could be, someone just wants to pause their membership. It could be that there's some sort of disciplinary action. It could be that the athlete is injured in a way that we can't have them come back to competition for a period of time. And there are a whole host of reasons why this might happen, because suspended is not banned, right? Suspended, your membership is going to come back online at some point. But what we don't want to have is a situation where, say, an athlete is suspended in one province or a membership is suspended in one province, but then that participant then just goes and buys a membership in another province in order to get around that suspension, right? So having that crosstalk is important. There are a number of provinces that are required to publish a list of disciplinary suspensions directly on their website. We are not interested in getting in the way of that or superseding that, but what we want is within Tracky a system that flags. So if Chris Lindsay is suspended in New Brunswick and he tries to go and get a membership in PEI, when I attempt to do the registration in PEI, something pops up to say, hey, Chris Lindsay, you're suspended. If you have questions about your suspension, please contact whoever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, in order to keep that from happening. We will have the potential of adding to a banned list, although I can't think of hopefully any situation where we'd have to execute on that. Permanently banning someone from participation in an NSO or a PSO is a pretty big step, and I would hope that we'd never get there. So, yep, Jesse.
So just a point of clarification for mostly myself, I suppose. The provinces are under Boxing Canada, right? So if I don't, like, if I'm suspended as a coach in BC from going to, or banned from going to events for whatever reason, I've been running my mouth or doing something bad in BC, I would automatically be banned across the country. Is that not true? Because like BC gets its authority from Boxing Canada, which gives its authority to every other province, and so everything should be connected. So any sort of banning or suspensions should be respected across the board. Am I understanding that right?
Absolutely. And that's why we need this suspension list and have a way for it to be visible, but the details of the suspension won't be visible, right? It's just Chris Lindsay is suspended up until February 2026, right? And if there is a need to communicate any more information about that, there'll be a process that someone would have to go through in order to get that information, but that would be protected information. Just whether someone is suspended or not, that is what we want our provincial volunteers and staff and sort of Tracky admin membership people. We want them to have that notice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the fun part of this. So in 2026, we are going to raise for some categories and drop for other categories the cost that the NSO is taking per membership. So to use an example, for our elite memberships in 2024 and 2025, $60 of that membership was coming to the NSO. The estimated cost for the NSO to execute and serve that registration, just the registration, that's including staff time, materials, having an employee available, came out to about $32.61 based on the number of registrations that we had. And that left $27 and change for us to be able to run programming specifically for that group, right? Per registration. And when I look at elite registrations, so programming for elite registrations would include an amount of money going towards coach development, an amount of money going towards officials development, an amount of money going towards making sure nationals happen, and also funding the national team. And any events that are around supporting the national team in that elite category. We are proposing a $5 increase for 2026, starting January 1st, not starting September 1st. We'll give us a grace period. So if we can get a whole bunch of registrations done in the first 3 months that they're available before December 31st, yeah, we won't get that money. I don't care, but it would just be nice to have a ton of registrations in that period. And then we're projecting out already and announcing that in 2027, we're going to go to $66, and in 2028, $67. In some categories, when I did the hard math on what it's costing for us to execute on the membership and how much programming are we providing to that group of athletes or group of participants, I think we were out of line. So when I look at U15s and U13s, we were charging $40 or have been for the last 2 years, at least 2 years, charging $40 per membership or per registration in those categories. The NSO programming dollars that we had available on that were sort of just under 13 and just over 13. But the NSO really doesn't provide a whole lot, right? Coach development, officials development, I think there's an argument there, but we don't run a national tournament for U15s, we don't run a national tournament for U13s, right? So we are dropping our registration fees for these categories. And the intent, and I'll be clear, and this is being recorded, the intent isn't for the provinces to also drop that. The intent is take that $5 difference or $10 difference that we're no longer taking and keep it and use it for the programming because you guys are the ones doing it, right? That'll go to help run training camps. It'll go to help run coaching programs. It'll go to help running your provincial championships, right? Because you are the ones executing on the programming area. I'm going to highlight for coach and officials, no change next year. We'll keep it at 60 and then minor increases looking at the 2 years after that. Recreational memberships currently at $5 per registration. We're going to bump that up to $6 because after the cost of serving the membership there, we're only making 65 cents, and that's pretty perilously close to zero. And we want to be able to provide a little bit more, and we'll talk about that a little later on. And then the other ones that are changing are when we get down into sort of the very few registrations that we get for initiation non-sparring, and there are these executive committee / lifetime memberships that we only had 2 of them in total so far in 2025. So we're not talking about a whole lot of people, but we're going to do an adjustment to those as well. Because again, we're not providing essentially any programming at the national level. And I think it is much more efficient for those dollars to stay at the provincial level so they can be used directly on the ground to support those participants. Okay.
Chris,
Yep.
what was the cost, let's say, just for elite, for example, like 2 years ago, or the $60? What was it? Was there any increase in the previous years? When was the last increase?
To the best of my knowledge, the last increase that we had was the 2024 rate, but I'm not sure, right? 2023, it may have been the same, but we get really weird with the numbers as soon as we get back far enough into the pandemic time period,
Okay.
right? So because the number of elite registrations that we had starting in 2021 and 2022 and continuing into 2023 went way down. And comparatively, although not equally, the number of registrations that we had in recreational went way up because a lot of provinces, because they weren't providing, and well, we couldn't have bouts, right?
Yeah,
So a lot of those elite registrations were converting into recreational registrations for a period of time. So the
understand.
data gets kind of messy, unfortunately.
Okay.
But what in my mind, what we're attempting to do here is sort of get back our um, our fees in line with the reality of, you know, inflationary costs, and we
Yeah.
held everything pretty tight for a while, and you know, at some point we're gonna have to, the longer we wait in order to put fees up, the bigger the jump is going to be. And I'm really hoping that by doing it in this way, where we have a bit of I won't call it insignificant. I'm not sure I call it significant either, but a noticeable increase. $5 is a noticeable increase.
Yep.
And then holding it to a very minor increase in 2027, 28. I feel that's a pretty good balance. And then, you know, next year, I would hope that we'll be able to forecast out what those potential changes will be beyond 2028 as well, so that provinces can start thinking about what they're going to do with their side of the membership fees as well.
Got it. Thank you.
And based on the numbers that I've got up here, right, we're looking at, you know, what does this actually do to our membership dollars that we're bringing in? Well, in 2026, we're anticipating an extra 20,000, 23,000, or round up. And then in 2027, it would be that extra 23,000 plus another 6.5. And then in 2028, we'll look at, we would anticipate that it'll be the 23,000 plus the 6.5 plus another 10,000. And part of that is the increases, and part of that is what I would call a conservative estimate on the actual number of registrations that we will have. So we haven't really gone all in on this pretty significant jump that we've got with the extra 600 and some registrations this season. We've kind of gone very conservative in what those increases will be, but we do anticipate a growing membership base going forward. Okay, so I don't hear any other questions, so I'm going to move on there. This has been up on sort of the docket for discussion for a while. I'm not going to go into any significant detail here. It's just to remind everyone that the only rule that exists on professional boxers is this mandatory 60-day medical rest. I call it a medical rest. Technically, it's a suspension of membership, but that sounds punitive, and I'm not sure we want it to sound punitive. But if a member of Boxing Canada has a professional fight or is involved in a fight in any other striking combat sport, they are required to take a 60-day suspension. And that's because we don't know what the medical practices are in that other sport. So we want to give them time to make sure that they're healthy enough that we can credibly say, if you come into, you know, the morning weigh-in and you get checked out by the doc, that we're not going to have an unfortunate situation where you're either not able to fight or you're potentially banged up in a way that the doctor won't be able to see, and then you get into the ring and something bad happens, right? So that rule exists. And I know I'm getting pressure from the national team athletes to try to get this down to a 30-day. I'm not sure we're ready to do that. I think we will continue on with this rule that has existed for quite a number of years, with this 60-day medical rest. And I just, like I said, I want everyone to understand that that rule exists and it is in force, right? Especially with members of the national team. Like, the one thing that these athletes can really do well is punch people. And if there's a way that they can make a little bit of money with, you know, a pro fight every now and then, I want to encourage them to do that. Tom.
Chris, the third bullet point, I'm not sure I understand, and maybe you can help me with it. NSO's desired state, all boxers face no restriction on membership, take their money, and can compete as long as they observe the 60-day medical rest and no
Yeah, so
knowledge. Does
yeah,
that
so
does
we've
that
got,
mean that? Sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say, we've got a number of provinces who call me fairly regularly to say, hey, we just kept someone from having a membership because they were a pro boxer 10 years ago. And my response to them is, why? Take their money, get them in a club, get them competing. The fact that they were a pro 10 years ago, or sometimes even longer than that, doesn't make them magical or dangerous, right? Um, and there are no international rules on this, right? The majority of athletes who compete at the Olympics have also competed pro. Not at a high level, obviously, but have competed pro. And we if someone wants desperately to be just a member of Boxing Canada through their province, take their money, right? Let's not find ways to keep them from being a member that is purely based on whether they were paid some paltry amount of money to go into a pro fight earlier in their lives.
And the point, Chris, no novice, that means that if they're novice, they can't do it if they were novice, or what does that mean?
Yeah, so if someone has competed pro at any time in their life, then I would certainly not allow them to go in and be considered a novice, even though they may not be able to pull up in their book. Well, I only did 2 pro fights, so technically I've only got 2 bouts that I'm transferring over into my blue book with my amateur bouts. So therefore I should be able to compete novice. I'm like, that I don't feel so comfortable with, right? Mostly because record keeping in the pro side is so poor, right? So
Agreed.
yeah, and that is an area, and we don't want to be in a situation like we've seen in some provinces, not necessarily with boxing, but maybe with MMA and with other striking sports where an athlete was allowed to compete as a novice, but in a different striking sport, they had many, many, many competitive bouts under their belt, right? So, if we find out that someone's in a novice tournament and they had, 40 Mai Tai fights, well, that's not a real novice, right? So, Jesse.
So just so this has come up a few times in BC, so just so I'm understanding that particular wrinkle, my understanding was any sort of experience in another striking discipline, regardless of how many fight you had, one Muay Thai fight, that makes you an open boxer. Is that your understanding of it?
The rule book clarifies that, and I do believe that is the case. Yeah.
Okay, because they're really like one is we don't know whether it's one or like there's no records. So
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and the other point here about membership and residence, we haven't had many calls on this in the last 3 months, so it feels like it's figured out a little bit. But this idea that we have some rules written down about membership and geographical, like where's your home at, and some rules around cross province or cross border into different province membership. I just want to remind everyone that we want to be as gentle with people on this as we possibly can, right? And there are 2 areas where this comes up. One is members of the national team, right? If a member of the national team moves to the National Training Center in Montreal and they want to continue being part of their home province, they should be allowed to do that. Um, the one thing that we are very careful with at the NSO level with our national team coaches is that athlete needs to only be supported by one province, right? And there will be no double dipping, right? And if the athlete wants to convert their membership to their new provincial residence, that's great. Let's figure out a way for them to do that. But let's not get all knickers in a knot over this issue. Let's do what's best for the athlete. So okay, I'm gonna pump on here. So just some updates for member services. So we've now got some posters that are being printed now, actually, trying to get Boxing Canada out into the clubs. So every officially registered or affiliated club within your province will be sent one of these posters to be able to put up. We're also going to add Boxing Canada stickers to each member package, starting with our 2026 memberships, just as a little nice thing for people to have. And we now have two retail offers on the table to be able to give a discount to our to our registered participants / members, whatever. And we will probably be making an announcement of that midway through the fall with a start date of January 1st. Okay, on when those offers become live. Quick update on coaching programs. So the pathways are all up on the website. We continue having strong uptake on evaluations for instruction beginner and competition introduction. And comp dev, we've got now 2 full master coach developers who were just brought online, one in BC and one in Manitoba, and we'll have another 2 online, one in Quebec and one out in the Maritime provinces, probably by the end of the year. And we anticipate that we will have an opportunity to probably add 1 or 2 more starting in 2026. So when I look at what's changed, the big thing here is comp dev, right? So our competition development program is fully running. It is important that coaches understand, in order to get into the comp dev program, you need to be full competition introduction certified, and you need to have all of your multi-sport courses complete at the comp dev level. Those are available through the locker before you can access any of the Boxing Canada programming. That Boxing Canada programming will appear just magically once you've met the minimum standards in your locker for e-learning, and we have dramatically dropped down the price on that e-learning. The previous e-learning system that we had available for coaches, which never seemed to work properly, the total cost was up in the $600-700 range. We've been able to drop that down to $150. The cost, sorry, for evaluation, unfortunately, is still real, and it is an intensive evaluation program. And we are not really sure what the cost will be there, but I would anticipate it will not be cheap. And if you take a look at what we're currently charging for our instruction beginner and our competition introduction, which is $180 for an evaluation to happen, I would suggest that we'll be looking at multiples of that for the comp dev level. A reminder, comp dev, you don't need comp dev to do anything currently by legislation, because the only reason we did require it was when we were in the Canada Games, and we are not currently in Canada Games. And unfortunately, the pathway to getting back into the Canada Games puts our first potential re-inclusion out past 2030. So it is not a pressing need. But the type of coaches who need or should have comp dev are, I want to be a national team coach, I want to be a provincial team coach, I want to be a full-time paid coach. And for those individuals who are trying to make coaching a living, I think having a little bit more expense is probably reasonable, given that if I was doing this for any other occupation, I'd have an expense in order to get certified. I do want to say, PTSOs, we need you to update your websites. The quality of information around coaching on the websites is poor. I still see lots of references to level 1, 2, 3. Those programs have not been available for more than 10 years. We need to make sure that ends. And so as soon as I've got someone who can dedicate a few hours to auditing each of the provincial websites, that's one of the things we're going to be looking for. We'll send you a list of, here are the exact pages where we found incorrect information, and we would like that changed. Okay. I've asked nicely the last 2 PTSO update meetings, and I'm not seeing a change. So we're going to start being a little bit more pokey with regards to the request. Okay, national coaching standards. We're gonna make a minor change to the national coaching standard starting in 2026, as promised. And that is in 2026, if you don't have any boxing specific education, so you haven't done even an introduction, instruction beginner course, you will not be allowed in the back of house at a nationally sanctioned competition. And then the other change here, if you are a trained but not yet certified instruction beginner coach, you will not be allowed to corner, period. You need to be certified. I mean, the reality is you need to be certified and should be certified. Congratulations to the provinces who already have a minimum coaching standard. We appreciate the efforts that you've gone through in order to do that. I know there was probably some difficult feedback for a while, but we think it's the right way to go. We think it's going to be healthy for athletes, coaches, and officials in order to have certified coaches only at competition, and we will get there eventually. Okay. But for 2026, this is what we are going to be operating on. Looking at officials programs. So the complete pathway is posted to the website. Reminder that level 1, 2, and 3 are provincial responsibility. And we do now have a reconstituted National Officials Committee. There is 1 seat per province on that committee, and they're about to go into their second meeting next week. A few other minor updates here. The NSO, we are committed to having a referee and judge mentor role at our national championships going forward. And the idea there is to take the feedback role that the TD had been managing at the same time as running the entire competition and separate that out to someone who is not, burdened by all the other things that need to happen at a competition. And this is mostly following a world boxing model where they call them evaluators, sort of providing feedback to the referees and judges at all times. I prefer the term mentor as opposed to evaluator, because evaluator sounds like we're trying desperately um, to give you a grade and then rank you. That's not really what we're attempting to do here. We're trying to, raise up everyone's opportunity to be a better referee and a better judge through sharing knowledge and talking through decisions and why did we arrive at certain things and not certain other outcomes. So we've got that going, and a reminder that, we've got all of our rule books and officials related tools up in the officials section of our website. Big things that are changing or minor things that are changing. So we do have a supervisor course. We continue banging through that update. We were hoping to have it online already, of course, but we're not quite there yet. Officials qualifications, we're now going to start maintaining those in the locker. So whenever officials education happens, we're going to make a reference in the locker. That's the coaching system. But we feel that one, we can do it for free because CAC isn't charging us for any of this. Plus, there is a lot of free education that is directly related to officiating that's available through the locker. I mean, it's targeted towards coaches, but it's really related to officiating. And some of that is safe sport related. Some of that is, anti-competition manipulation related. And some of it is just how to deal with people, either young people or old people, and how to manage our time while we're executing the role of an official best. So we feel that's a strong tie-in. We are going to move to, instead of the wallet cards for officials, we're going to move to the same sort of cards that we have for coaches, which looks like this. So you'll have a reference to what level you are, and then a reference to your safe sport status, because safe sport status is going to become a bigger and a bigger and a bigger thing, and we want to get ahead of that while we can. And then for 2026 and 2027, we are going to attempt a little change in how we view our level 4 officials. So if you're a level 4 official or up, we are going to de-emphasize the recognition of your provincial affiliation when it comes to how we are executing who is actively officiating at a nationally sanctioned tournament. What does this mean? It means that when we are selecting RNJs for nationals, we are going to emphasize first who are the best officials we can get, and that will be prioritizing our world boxing certified officials. We've got 5 of them right now. And then looking at who are our 3-star, 2-star, 1-stars, and then down at looking at our level 4s. There will still, of course, be an opportunity for newer officials to be rotated through those opportunities, because we want to have some progression. But when we are selecting, we are not going to start with provincial affiliation. We're going to start with essentially competency and demonstrated skill. And we will still keep in the back of our mind that we want to have provincial representation, because that is developmentally appropriate. But we are one of the only countries that worries about provincial affiliation and the potential for conflict of interest at our national championships. The best US judges are there judging their national championships. The best British officials are there judging their national championships. And we want to be doing the same thing, because we need to emphasize this idea of the type of boxing that we need to see at our national championships needs to reflect what the best type of boxing is for success internationally. Okay, looking at hosting. So we've got the hosting section of the website has been updated. Our hosting plan for 2025 through 2028 has been updated as well, including a list of municipal funding sources. So if you've got anyone who's hosting an event and you're interested in finding ways to get money, that information is available for you. Our bid package for 2027 is out, and we really encourage everyone to take a look at that. I know we've already got 2 potential bids coming in for 2027, one for our youth or our U17, U19, U23s, and we've already got potential bid in for our elite championship as well for 2027. We have a national license for the Sport Data Competition Management System, and that's so international style scoring. So the round scores are available in the intermissions, and it's an electronic system that uses either keypads, like hardwired keypads, or it can just go off of phones and iPads that have logged into the secure system. And so that's available for provinces starting in 2026. We're going to pilot that out in Winnipeg this year at Elite Nationals. We've been working on, continuing to work on this sort of ringside doctor clinic. It's still early stages for that, but we do have 2 fantastic resources that are available online. So if you have a doctor who has never been at a boxing competition before, or even at a weigh-in before, and they are looking to find out what it is they've got themselves into, we've got 2 fantastic things. One is a very, very long PowerPoint presentation, and the other is sort of a cheat sheet and sort of requirements from world boxing. But both those resources I think are excellent, and it's the kind of thing that you can sort of send over to those doctors in advance, let them look through it, and then they'll have some more informed questions when they actually arrive to help out. And of course, a heads up on our Paralympic and Adaptive Committee. They've been doing great work, and we are happy to announce that we will have our first ever para competition at a national level occurring this November in Winnipeg. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like. I don't think we're going to have enough competitors that it'll be a full tournament, but it will certainly be high quality bouts, a limited number, but of high quality bouts with athletes who have been actively training, some of them for quite a number of years, without having an opportunity in Canada to compete properly. National Tournament Series. So again, that's recognition of our Brampton Cup, Canada Cup, and the Quebec Open, and having that tie into nationals, right? We also have this national show series. So we've dabbled with this a little bit this year. We had the amazing show at the Battle of the Prairies in Regina, and then we've also got the Melee Gala. And at both of those events, these are one night events where our national team and another national team have a dual meet, and then those bouts are interleaved with sort of local show bouts that are happening. I feel this is a great model. We want to expand on it a little bit, and I know there's some interest from Ontario of hosting an event. I would really love to have an event like this happening either in Quebec or in the Maritimes. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. The national team is looking to have probably 4 of these opportunities per year, because it's a great way for us to be able to send um, uh, athletes with the national team program who have not really had a lot of international experience, and to give them an international quality bout without having to go outside the country. So we've got all the advantages of a home field, but yet international competition coming to us. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we want to continue plugging those. National sanctions. So we continue to have difficulty around sanctioning, in that no one seems to be contacting us about it. Well, that's going to end for 2026. Yeah, the rule book is the rule book. It's been published for many years about what constitutes a national level event. And I believe it's if you've got 4 or more provinces in attendance, you need to have some sort of national sanction. We're not going to make this an onerous process, but we are going to make this a process. And then PTSO sanction information sharing. So we are, with the exception of BC, so thank you to BC, we are not getting sanction information, like post-event sanction reports, about any tournaments that are happening or shows that are happening across Canada. This means that when our insurance company says, hey, I got your letter saying that you want to pay less for insurance, where's the evidence that you have a safe sport? And I can't give it to them because I have zero data. And I know that when provinces are asking around, hey, how can we, like, is there an opportunity for us to pool insurance and get better rates? I say, yes, there would be, if you would share any of the information about what you're doing with regards to competition. So we need that to happen. We've now got a tracking form based on the Quebec model, or sorry, the BC model that we're going to be sending out. And we do expect that that information will be coming into the national office, but the provincial associations will hear more about that in the coming months. Looking at NSO communication, so we continue updating the website. We've now got the weekly email summaries available that you can sign up for. A reminder that we do have our online store available. The big thing that's on there is the evaluations for coaches, but there's all sorts of other little trinkets and doodads now available. We've got a press release system for communications. So if you're interested in receiving our press releases, we don't send them out very often. They tend to be very focused on competition results, but those are available to you if you want to sign up. We have sort of an Instagram first, Twitter and Facebook after sort of social media policy or strategy right now. We are moving all of our meeting video recordings onto YouTube, and right now we technically have 2 YouTube pages, but one of them is very old and we do not have access to it. It's got 1,000 subscribers on it. I think the last big thing that was on there was the 2019 Nationals out in Victoria. But we're trying to get access to it, but it is not looking good. So we started up a new one, but we've only got 31 subscribers on it, and we're really hoping to be able to plug that a little bit. So we're putting all our meeting videos up there. The national team has been dabbling with putting up live video and recorded video of our practices, so that people can see what we're doing, and that we've been getting positive feedback on that. Although I would argue that watching an hour and a half boxing practice is not like the most exciting thing to do in the world. But if you're a coach and you're looking to see, what it is that a national team practice looks like compared to one of your practices, I think it could be quite interesting. So it's available there. I also want to highlight the board and committee report system, which we're trying to keep up to date. It's a lot of work to keep it up to date, but we're trying really hard. So if you're interested in what's going on at the committee level or the board level, or even at, these meetings, these update meetings, that information is available to you. Some quick web stats. We seem to be hovering around this sort of 500 visitors per week in the English homepage, and 70 to 80 on the French homepage. It's gone down a little bit over summer. This is pretty standard for us. And we see some big spikes around competition, which of course you think would be as it should be. What we are seeing is that the duration that people are spending on our website continues to sort of remain high, which is good, which seems to me to think that we've got better high quality information available for people. So that's excellent. And then we do look every week at what were our most viewed pages. Inevitably, we see things like coaching, nationals, and national team profiles. National team profiles, we know it's not great, but we're working on it. And then our events calendar is always high. And then Find a Boxing Club is always high as well. And I know the provincial sites generally have these Find a Boxing Club systems on, but we know that ours is hit pretty regularly, both in English and in French. And so, having up-to-date information there is really important, and we try our best. With these regular update meetings, so we've got PTSO update meetings. I'm going to try to put those 3 times a year on the second Thursday and Friday of every month. This month is a little weird having to do it one day earlier because I'm headed to Halifax tomorrow. Our HP updates we do every month, and those are on the 4th Thursday and Friday. We've got into a pretty good pattern with those. Coach updates. We're going to do those on the second Thursday and Friday every 3 months, and sort of interleaved with the PTSO meetings. And we'll do the same thing around officials programming, where we can get into a little bit more detail on the coach and officiating programs, and hopefully have more actual coaches and officials asking questions. This is just an easy way to get the information out. And like I said, every 3 months for those, but that sort of sets us up for that second Thursday and Friday every month that some sort of update meeting will be happening. We did have a social media and communications intern. He late last week got offered a full-time job. So congratulations, Simon. We're very proud of you. It was a good 2 months while it lasted. You taught us a lot, and we're going to try to keep that momentum up. So but we now have an open spot. If anyone is interested in helping out with our social media or with sort of more broad communication stuff, let us know. We are pulling provincial information from your calendars when we can find them, and putting that onto the national calendar. We try to keep up with that, and we try hard to keep all of our committee meetings and NSO meetings also up on that calendar, although we're not quite so good at that yet, but we're working on it. And just a reminder, you need to update the PTSO websites. We see a lot of outdated information, and I encourage you, please link to the national site. If you're not going to update information even on a yearly basis, just link to what the NSO is doing, and that way we can take care of the updates. And we will start auditing websites, and any links that we see towards IBA or AIBA, which is even older, we need those taken down right away. Okay, it's far too long that's been up. A quick update on governance. So our governance and policy committee continues to push through bylaw updates, and those will be set for a special general meeting, or potentially, well, it has to be done at a special general meeting before the AGM this year. Because we need to add in athlete director positions, and we will have 2 athlete directors. They are full board positions. And the criteria for being one of those athlete board directors is that you need to be a recently retired national level athlete. We can't have, I would argue, we can't have current national team athletes also sitting on the board, because inevitably there will be too many conflicts of interest, because anything having to do with money, staffing, major programming areas, it's going to have a direct effect on national team programming. So don't think it's appropriate. But we have lots of former national team athletes who I think this would be a great opportunity for them, and whether they stay on our board or whether they then transition to being on a provincial board, I think would be fantastic. After 2 or 3 years of being on the national board and having that experience, then being able to transfer that over into being on a provincial board, I think would be great. We do have our AGM, of course, coming up in December. It'll be formally scheduled shortly by the board. And of course, one of the major things of the AGM every year is our financial update. We, of course, have our audit done now for 2022, 2023. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that was a long time ago, you're right, it was. It has taken us a long time to get our books together, but that was completed in the spring and shared publicly. And then our 2023-24 audit and our 2024-25 audit are being done together. It's been about 2 months now, and we are down to the final, putting decimal places in numbers. And we're anticipating that'll be done by the end of this month, and that way we'll be completely up to date with all of our financial reporting. And I will have an opportunity to sleep at night again. So I'm really looking forward to that. Other quick stuff, international travel passes. So we've got the revised ITP request form. We ask that you use the new form because it just makes processing of these really easy. We also need you to get those in early. The number of last minute ones that we get, we're happy to do them, but it really makes it easier if you can get them done well in advance. Our trans athlete policy is going to have to change because there's going to be an update through World Boxing based on genetic testing that they're going to require. And we're going to have to do something around this, but we're a little unsure as to what we're doing yet because we haven't seen World Boxing's full policy yet. But there will be a change coming. Hall of Fame. One of the requests from the Hall of Fame members and committee was that we move to kind of a banquet format. That's not to say what we have been doing in the last 2 years hasn't been appreciated. I think it's gone over really well with sharing the Hall of Fame induction with as many of our current athletes and coaches as we possibly can. But this is something that's been a request, and we're going to start moving on that for 2026. And of course, we're looking for our next round of induction. So if you have any potential inductees, please follow the link, look at the existing policy, and submit those requests to have our Hall of Fame committee take a look and see whether they meet the criteria or not. And live streaming. So through the very generous support of one of our sponsors, we have a live streaming rig available with 4 cameras that gets used at the National Training Center to do those broadcasts that we're playing with a little bit. And if you have a boxing event that you would like to have live streamed, we will make our system available to you. We're happy to do it. It's a super easy setup. And we will broadcast for free on our YouTube page so that you get the notoriety and the excitement of being able to have that event broadcast out to friends, family, other members of Boxing Canada, and we get some visibility on boxing in Canada. If you already have a live streaming system set up and you're making some money off of it, that's great. We're not doing this to make money. We're doing this as a service to our members. So I just want everyone to know that it's available for you. A quick note on ITPs. So we do keep stats off of all this. And I want to say Manitoba, you guys are the ones who are requesting the most ITPs every year. Congratulations to you. It's followed by Alberta and then New Brunswick. And if you are interested in finding out some good places to go with a team, particularly down to the States, we've now got pretty good data for the last 2.5 years on where our athletes are going, how old those athletes are, what level coach is attending with them, what's the average team size, how long do they go for. We've got all that information compiled based on the ITPs that come in. So thank you for putting in those ITPs. We still think there are a lot of people who should be sending in ITPs who are not. It is a voluntary system, but we really appreciate getting the data because it is pretty meaningful to us and it helps us look at the developmental pathway, particularly around U17 and U15 athletes. And then sort of to finish off, so our critical list, a reminder that the new 2026 membership fees will go into effect January 1st. Hall of Fame nominations, please get them in. Bids for 2027 for our U17, U19, U23 nationals, which will be in the East for 2027, and our elite nationals for 2027 will be in the West. So if you're interested in bidding, please let us know. A reminder about that 90 days of being a member before competing. I know some provinces have made this a thing, and we encourage provinces to go in this direction. I think it's just from a safety management and risk management point of view, I think it's a really strong way to go. And I think that's it. It is. So thank you very much for your time. We'll be posting a recording of this up to the website on YouTube. And of course, all these notes and presentation are available on our communications dashboard. Okay. All right. Have a great day, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you either in a club or at a competition.